a pesar de ser mi comadre, es la fundadora y gerente de Innovative Communication Group y conductora de Elemento Latino, un programa de televisión independiente en español, cuyo objetivo es informar y ayudar a la comunidad hispana a acceder a recursos y navegar por los sistemas. Únanse a mí para darle la bienvenida a Verónica Vázquez.
Muy buenos días. El propósito de este evento es facilitar un diálogo entre líderes comunitarios y funcionarios electos locales sobre la inseguridad en la vivienda y en un ambiente divertido y estimulante. El tema de este evento es un hogar para florecer, representando visualmente la imagen que aparece en nuestras camisetas. Este tema y esta imagen representan la idea de un hogar que es mucho más que un techo sobre la cabeza, sobre nuestra cabeza. Todos tenemos derecho a una vivienda, pero también debemos vivir en un lugar que nos ofrezca las condiciones necesarias para crecer, desarrollarse, prosperar y alcanzar nuestro máximo potencial como individuos y comunidades. Este tema representa en el mundo como debería ser, el futuro ideal de todos, que todos aspiramos a crear juntos. Para lograr esta visión, debemos examinar de cerca nuestra realidad actual y afrontar los desafíos que enfrentamos hoy. Es uno de los momentos, en estos momentos escucharemos testimonios poderosos de miembros de la comunidad que han vivido experiencias de inseguridad habitacional y sus propuestas de soluciones viables. Nuestros funcionarios electos invitados escucharán y luego responderán a estas historias y darán soluciones a sus propuestas. Al final de esta discusión esperamos obtener compromisos claros, no solo de los funcionarios electos, sino también de ustedes. Al final hablaremos sobre cómo pueden involucrarse con este grupo y campaña. Es importante reconocer que cada historia individual está situada en un contexto más amplio que cuenta una historia más grande. Entonces, para apreciar plenamente estas historias y soluciones, veamos más de cerca algunos datos y cifras clave sobre la vivienda que nos dan forma a nuestras comunidades hoy. Ahora doy la bienvenida al escenario a nuestro primer orador de la Alianza Comunitaria de Inquilinos. Por favor, pasar. Okay, now we are inviting to Alliance of Tenants presentation. If you can come forward. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kim Hardy, Executive Director for the Community Alliance of Tenants. The Community Alliance of Tenants is Oregon's only statewide, grassroots, tenant-controlled tenant rights organization. CAT educates, organizes, and develops leadership of low-income tenants. We're built on three key ideas that form our approach to empowering renters. That's tenant education, tenant organizing, tenant advocacy, and this equals tenant power. Over the last 28 years, it's been our mission to educate and empower tenants to demand safe, stable, and affordable rental homes. We believe that housing is the basis of a strong community. We bring tenants together to organize and collectively advocate for fair and equal protections in housing practices and policies. Collective action works. In 2015, CAT members declared a renter's state of emergency. From the urgency and tenant-defined solutions came the Portland Relocation Assistance Policy, strengthening of security deposit rights, and the first in the nation statewide rent stabilization policy. That all came from tenants like yourself. While many significant tenant protections were won, the pandemic job losses, followed by inflation, hurt the ability of many to keep their housing. November is National Homelessness Awareness Month. So we're shining a light on the fact that the leading cause of homelessness is eviction from people who cannot afford their housing. Right now, Oregon is experiencing the highest record of eviction rates in our state's history, and high living costs are making it where more working people, seniors, families, and communities of color, more than ever, are being pushed towards homelessness. The eviction rate for Black women is 3 times the rate for white women, and the disparity is widening. Studies show that right now, the average working person cannot afford to live in the city of Portland and the surrounding area with 1 full-time job. And the average household most at risk of eviction is a single-family household with children. This is tearing the stability of our families, neighborhoods, and overall stability as a community, and it has to be addressed with bold and urgent action. That's why CAT shows up every day to make sure that renters across the state's voices are being brought forward to push forward the change that we so desperately need at this moment. This year, we're trying to slow the impact of evictions with asking the state to invest at least $150 million in emergency rent assistance. We also want to increase the number of apartments that are affordable by reducing the number of buildings that are allowed rent increases of any amount. And this is especially important to us that culturally specific organizations are supported to distribute emergency rent assistance funds to the communities most in need. And that housing protections extend to all people, regardless of who they are or where they are from. When we declared a tenant state of emergency almost 10 years ago, we did not know that the social justice changes it would inspire. Looking back, we also could not know that those changes are not enough for the challenges ahead of us. The rent is still too darn high. Like everyone, your rent is your largest bill. Any increase in rent means that something else that you need is going to get cut. The corporate landlord businesses know that we're trapped into using their housing even when they are rent gouging. And we've learned that rent increases are in fact a leading cause of inflation. In many states, including Oregon, rent control is preempted from becoming a law, and corporations are setting the prices nationally. This is price fixing. It's illegal and it has to stop. And let me point out that housing justice is racial justice. Black and brown people are more harmed than any others by current housing policy. When you, Community Alliance of Tenants, Stable Homes for Oregon Families, and other housing advocates are looking to advance the path for housing stability for all, and we're also trying to create a path towards racial justice. At the most basic level, we need to stop allowing housing to be a commodity for profit. Housing is profitable for a few because our laws allow the theft of land from Indigenous people and the theft of labor from Black and brown people to this day. Housing is a necessity, like food and water, and we need to treat it that way. I want you to know that many people before us and now are working to create a path towards housing justice. And I want to leave you with some thoughts about what's possible when you dream and believe that the wisdom of your experience and when we come together to demand solutions. Here are some policy changes that tenants are demanding to bring dignity and stability to our lives. One is a federal lift on rent control preemptions. Another is federal and state rent control, where the cost of housing is regulated even after someone moves out. We should not give away public money to developers without getting a promise that the rent will not continue to increase. And tenants are forming tenant boards to negotiate with landlords. We're working to get rid of late fees and application fees. Tenants can unionize to use their collective power, including rent strikes, to gain better housing conditions. And giving everyone access to legal help if they get an eviction notice is a very powerful tool. We also want to make funds available for emergencies when a family cannot pay the rent. So Kat and others are beginning to build our collective power into a political identity, one that can put people in office with the lived experience to create fair housing policy. As Chara Raghuveer from the Kansas City Tenants Union said, organized tenants are forming an identity of power versus an identity of shame simply because we're not owners. We are realizing that we can be the experts of our experience and the makers of our own liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And at this moment, I would like to invite a representative from Community Action presentation. Please give un fuerte aplauso.
I'm going to try and go hands-free. Good morning. Buenos dias. My name is Kemp Shuey, and I'm the Executive Director for Community Action. And I was asked to come here today to talk to you about the history of our Emergency Rent Assistance Program and the impact it's had in Washington County. First, I want to share a story about Maria. This is not her real name, but Maria is a single mom raising a 14-year-old daughter. She works full-time as a surgery coordinator. But with the rising cost of rent and food, she is barely scraping by. She lives paycheck to paycheck by keeping a very strict budget that covers only the essentials. When an unexpected event happened, her careful budget was derailed. The engine in her car blew, leaving her with an enormous bill. She got a second part-time job to help. But the increase in income didn't come fast enough, and she fell behind on rent. Before I knew it, I was behind on rent, and once things get behind, it starts to snowball. There is no way to catch up, she told us. She was served an eviction notice, and that is when the nightmares and sleepless nights began. Her head was spinning with fear. She didn't know where to turn, and started looking at options like long-term hotel stays. Fortunately, she found our emergency rent program. We were able to pay Maria's back rent so she could keep her home. And we covered an additional 2 months to give her time to get back on her feet. Maria remembers the moment she found out she was getting this critical help. I broke down in tears of gratitude. I felt like I could breathe. It meant everything to me. Maria's story is one of thousands we've heard at Community Action over the last 5 years. Before the COVID pandemic, our emergency rent program was very small. Funding for the program came from a few sources, such as cities and community groups. At that time, we could only provide a partial payment for 1 month's rent, and at the most, we could assist about 30 households per month. When the pandemic arrived, we quickly recognized that our community would need this resource as people were unable to work or pay their rent. Federal officials recognized that this resource was needed as well nationwide and passed legislation that included funds to support this effort. This legislation, called the CARES Act, allowed us to significantly increase our ability to help the community. By the end of the summer of 2020, Community Action was serving nearly 400 households a month. Since 2020, Community Action has continued to deliver this critical resource thanks to funding from federal, state, county, and metro governments. From 2020 to 2024, we've distributed over $57 million in emergency rent assistance alone has prevented eviction for 7,500 households. The average emergency rent payment has ranged from $4,100 to $9,200. And I think most significantly, 75% of those households did not need to come back for additional rent assistance. It's a one-time intervention that's stabilizing people's lives. Community Action recognized that a resource like this would be difficult for historically underserved communities to access. From the beginning, we partnered with organizations with strong ties to these communities to ensure as much access to the program as possible. Partners have included IRCO, the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, Central Cultural, Vienna Star, the Somali American Council of Oregon, and the Muslim Educational Trust. We know the need for these resources remain high for families in Washington County. Over the last 3 months alone, over 2,000 people have called us seeking assistance with their rent. And people reaching out for help are like Maria. They are hardworking, struggling to get by. It only takes one unexpected event, like a job loss, to push a family to the brink of eviction. After 5 years, we know that emergency rent assistance is very effective at preventing homelessness. Unfortunately, funding for this critical need continues to shrink, and it's not permanent. If you want to see this critical resource continue, then it's important for you to let your elected leaders know how important this is to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this moment, I would like to invite Oregon Law Center presentation.
Hi, everybody. Buenos dias. My name is Sybil Pebb. I work at the Oregon Law Center. I want to really thank you for your amazing work and for this amazing commitment to community. And it's really nice to be invited to be here this morning. I work at the Oregon Law Center, or OLC, and we provide free legal assistance to low-income communities in Oregon. People struggling to make ends meet on matters like eviction protection, civil rights, employment rights, immigration status, health care, and physical safety against domestic and sexual violence. OLC's Hillsborough Regional Office serves low-income clients and seniors with these issues in Washington, Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Yamhill counties. Our services are free to our clients, and we depend on grants, donations, and state and federal funding to keep our doors open. We're deeply appreciative of our supporters, but even so, unfortunately, we're not adequately funded to serve everyone who needs and deserves assistance. And for that reason, we focus some of our time on policy solutions to try to increase access to services and change laws so that fewer people need legal assistance. There are nearly, just as a snapshot, there are nearly 700,000 low-income and senior Oregonians in our state who qualify for our services, and there are 131 legal aid lawyers statewide. So that's out of balance. And we served about 27,000 people directly last year, and we try to work with community partners to have volunteer clinics and pro bono clinics and provide folks with information about how they can also help themselves. Helping people access and maintain safe and stable housing is a critical part of our work, and as housing becomes less and less affordable and homelessness increases. And this is a major focus of my legislative advocacy and our team's legislative advocacy to try to make the law and housing stability more accessible for everybody. We know the reasons that we see people living outside in our communities. There's not enough housing, wages have not kept pace with rising rents, and our safety nets like shelters, rent assistance, mental health care, and eviction protection have been underfunded for decades. And this is a national problem. Oregon, thanks to amazing leadership and commitment from communities like yours, has made great strides and has done more than many states to try to address these issues. We are making progress, and we're grateful for the support and partnership from our partners. thanks to these leaderships, we have had the first statewide protection against no-cause eviction, the first rent stabilization laws, increased housing development, local housing needs analyses, and a statewide network of emergency rent assistance providers like you just heard about from Ken. We have a lot of work still to do, however, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. We're responding to the fact that in Oregon, as Kim mentioned, there are an average of 2,500 eviction filings per month in Oregon. That's far above pre-pandemic levels, and 87% of those eviction filings are due to unaffordable rents. When someone like Maria falls behind and is unable to get the support that she needs, that results in a filing and can result in a displacement. And in this market, where there are such high rent costs and so low vacancy rates, an eviction leads often directly to the risk of homelessness. We know that for every $100 increase in the average rents in a community, there is a 9% increase in homelessness. We have the most homeless children in the nation and a significant population of seniors in Oregon experiencing homelessness. This is the most rapidly growing category of people experiencing homelessness. Our focus on new construction and increasing housing supply is fabulous. It is the right place for us to focus, and it's going to take years to balance out the market. And until we have accomplished that market balancing out, and until rents have come down, we need to focus on policies that help stabilize rents and on programs and supports and services that help people who are caught up in the unaffordability crisis. So in the coming session, we'll be working with our partners like community action agencies and Community Alliance of Tenants and the Stable Homes Coalition and the Fair Shop Coalition to improve the coverage of our state's rent stabilization laws. We'll do this by narrowing the exemptions for new construction. Right now, new units added to the market do not have any regulations, and they can increase rents with spikes, and that contributes to gentrification of existing affordable neighborhoods. We'll also work to ensure greater protection from rent spikes for manufactured homeowners who right now, if their spaces that they rent for the homes that they own become too unaffordable, they are displaced, forcing them to leave the homes that they own, often their biggest asset, behind. And corporate landlords then take those homes over for their own benefit. We want to prevent that. We'll also work to prohibit landlords from using price-fixing software to artificially inflate rents. That's a national problem, and many jurisdictions are starting to take action. We want Oregon to be one of those, to prohibit that use. In addition to the rent stabilization policy improvements, we'll work to ensure adequate funding for emergency rent assistance, as is previously described, and we'll make sure to also include assistance to improve the infrastructure of our community partners so that they have the staff and the support that they need to effectively and efficiently get those benefits out the door. We specifically will prioritize the community-based, culturally specific programs that are working with individuals and communities that are at increased need. We'll also work to prioritize funding and policies that preserve existing affordable housing, including protections for tenants who are living in buildings where the affordability restrictions are expiring. And we'll work to improve our fair housing laws, specifically to make sure that there is coverage for people who do not have citizenship status, so that that status cannot be used against them as a discrimination factor, prohibiting them from accessing housing and from staying stable in the housing that they have. And last but certainly not least, we'll work to ensure increased resources for shelters and homelessness services to make sure that people who are forced to live outside have access to the supports they need to get sheltered and stay safe, and communities have the resources that they need to provide humane and compassionate services. In closing, I'll just say that we know the steps that it takes to solve homelessness and achieve housing stability for our communities. The Oregon legislature has made great progress by focusing on proven solutions like building more affordable housing, increasing support services, shelters, and transitional housing options, emergency rent assistance, rent stabilization, and eviction prevention. Our responsibility now is to prevent backsliding and to continue and increase this progress. We really look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Bueno, pues ahora que hemos explorado los hechos y los datos que rodean la vivienda, es importante recordar que detrás de estos números hay personas reales de todos los ámbitos de la vida. Hoy tenemos la oportunidad de escuchar historias personales que representan a todas las generaciones, desde jóvenes de secundaria hasta adultos jóvenes, también adultos y personas mayores. Estas historias darán vida al lado humano del problema de la vivienda, resaltando su impacto en toda la comunidad. Nuestra primera narradora es Verónica Aguilar, que compartirá su experiencia sobre cómo vivió después de la tormenta de hielo en enero. Así es que demos un fuerte aplauso.
Buenos días. Good morning. Doing this in English, what I said in inglés. Imagine it's 4 a.m. and I am woken up by my daughter telling me our apartment was flooding. Our upstairs neighbor's pipes had frozen and broke due to the ice storm that many of us experienced last winter. Our ceiling gave way and exposed the mold that supposedly wasn't there, according to our slum landlord. I had called 911, who told me to call the city of Tigard, who then threw the ball back to 911. While our on-site apartment manager, who supposedly couldn't shut off the water, continued to pour into our apartment from 4 a.m. until 10 a.m. as my poor husband over here was throwing buckets of water for 6 hours straight outside our patio door, as you can see in the pictures. Of course, we had to evacuate our home for 20 years. And I had to live in a hotel for 2 months. My anxiety disorder kicked in, and the trauma for our 2 children began. Thank Margie Green from Packard Pride for feeding us, because unfortunately DHS didn't. And I apologize for what I'm about to say, but we received no assistance from Community Action, Community Alliance Attendants, Family Promise, Red Cross, FEMA, or Law Center. None of the community resources that are in any of these guides. And thanks to that state representative who unfortunately canceled and isn't here to hear this. Those 3 phone numbers that he gave me, I was for legal assistance. Well, the first one, I was disconnected. The second one, give to renters' rights. And the third never bothered to return my call. My community of 30 years failed my family. And to think I'm a privileged U.S. citizen who's educated, bilingual, bicultural, and knows how the system works, yet I had all of these barriers. Now just imagine our diverse community here and all the additional obstacles that they face. We are currently stuck in a lease paying $1,000 more than our previous apartment here in Tigard. I still can't find anyone to take on these old slumlords without them charging me the money I don't or we have. We're 3 months away from the 1-year anniversary when all this happened to us, and still no emergency weather shelter in place. A 10% legal rent increase hovers over our heads, and community resources that are unfortunately only helping the evicted. Lastly, please, city officials and everybody here, don't pity me and don't give me another number to call. In fact, I offer you, or offer me, a chair at your table with other stakeholders to find solutions, because I will be there for my community. Thank you.
At this moment, each elected official will have 2 minutes to respond.
I'm sorry, and I know that we've had many discussions about this, and we continue to work towards a solution, and I welcome you to the table and to continue the conversation on what we can do better.
Veronica, yeah, I want to echo what the mayor just said. I'm absolutely heartbroken to hear that. And I thank you so much for the bravery it took you to come and share the story in front of so many people. I was a little nervous to public speak before this, and hearing your story, all my nerves are just gone, because it's nothing compared to what you just did. What you just described was a system failure, bottom line. It's appalling and it's unacceptable. And it's not enough to just, as elected officials, which I'm not one, but I have the privilege of serving one, it's not enough to just send you numbers and tell you it's your problem and move on. Elected officials are in charge of facilitating our system, representing folks in the system, and improving the system. We have to do a better job of that. There's in my mind, a two-pronged approach. First is the short term. What can we do to help folks like you who are in these situations get access to resources? We put so much into resources, and folks need to be able to get them, and they need to work when they get them. The second is the long-term approach. Solving these challenges and making sure this never happens to anyone again takes long-term investment, long-term care, and long-term commitment. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have got to reform systems and ensure that this doesn't happen again. All I can say is I'm deeply sorry Rep. Bowman couldn't be here today. I'm going to make sure that he's aware of this situation, and will include you at the table, and everybody else like you who has gone through something like this. You have our commitment on that. Thank you.
I just want to echo a lot of what has just already been said. We're very sorry that you've gone through this. And I apologize that Senator Woods could not be here as well, but I'm definitely going to share your story with him. This is a problem that we're seeing throughout housing in a number of different ways. Resources are overstretched. We need to get more funding into these programs that help provide legal services for folks. And that is something that Senator Woods is going to be working on in the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you for your story. Sadly, you are probably not the only one with a similar story, and we have 24 cities that are under the metro jurisdiction. 2 years ago, we didn't have a program. We are developing the program in coordination with the counties and the cities. We now have emergency shelters. We aren't getting it right yet, but we are working on it, and it's my commitment and the commitment of the Metro Council to make sure that everybody understands that short-term rental assistance, intermediate rental assistance, and then long-term rental assistance are all critical aspects. We have to help people, and we have helped several thousands of people on the short-term rental assistance, and then we have to keep people in their houses, and then we have groups of people with, whether seniors are a good example, that need long-term assistance. These are things, we haven't figured out the correct balance yet and how to serve everybody. We are working on it, and I appreciate your story.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your story. It's been said here before. I also want to thank my fellow officials here for your commitment to address these issues. I know you've already been in contact with Mayor Liu. I think that's a great start. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce Jason Snyder. Jason is already standing up. Jason is Jason is the commissioner-elect for this district, former mayor of Tigard. So Jason and I will be looking at opportunities to address the gaps that you have experienced, and that emergency situation was felt extremely in my district as well, up further north. So thank you for being here. I want to thank Father John. I want to thank Danny Ruda and all of the volunteers that have made this an opportunity for us to come together. I can talk about the things that we're doing, and I intend to, but at the same time, the purpose of being here is to listen and to recognize those of you that have issues that have not been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ahora en este momento quiero presentarles otra historia. Esta historia es de Cintia. So, demos la bienvenida a Cintia.
Imagine having to move 5 times in just 6 months as a 7th grader. Well, in 2012, I attended Chehalem Valley Middle School in Newburgh. Unfortunately, my mom had a work accident that drastically affected our living situation. A family in Newburgh was renting out a room, so my mom, my brother, and I moved in with them around September or October. We stayed there for a month or 2 before eventually moving to another city. We moved in around December with a couple who was renting their 2nd room. They lived in an apartment near Greenberg Road, where I started attending Fowler Middle School. We lived there for 3 months. That December, I underwent surgery, and during recovery, I developed depression. I believe it was in March 2013 when we first moved to a shelter in Hillsborough. During that time, I had a special commute to get to school each day. By April, we transferred to another shelter in Tigard, where I was able to walk to school. However, we were told unexpectedly to leave 2 days early. Thankfully, a friend from church let us stay with her for 2 nights. In May, we got approved to move to another shelter back in Hillsborough. This shelter offered us a chance to work with a case manager, and my mom accepted the help. Once again, I had a special commute to school. Then in June 2013, we moved to a women's shelter in Newburgh. Each morning, my mom would drive me to school until my last day of 7th grade. At one point, things became overwhelming, and I felt like I had hit rock bottom. I walked away from the shelter, wandering around the city to clear my mind. I didn't want to be found. I even prayed to God for something bad to happen to me so I could finally feel at peace. Eventually, I returned to the shelter to find my family waiting for me outside, relieved that I was safe. We ended up living in Newburgh for around 3 months. At the end of August 2013, we moved back to Tigard, where we ended up living in a garage. Starting in 8th grade at Fowler, I had the chance to use the school bus again. We stayed at the garage for about 9 months. Our case manager helped us find an apartment in Tualatin, and we moved there at the end of May 2014. My mom drove me back to school until my last day at Fowler. For freshman year, I attended Tualatin High. Later, our case manager found another apartment back in Tigard, where we moved in June 5th, 2015. Once again, my mom would drive me from one city to another so I could attend school. I attended Tigard High from my sophomore year until graduation. I felt a lot of embarrassment about experiencing homelessness. I buried those feelings and kept that part of my life hidden. not telling anyone until now. Today we're still in Tigard, where we live with our 6-year-old tabby cat.
We all know education is important for our children. She was jumping from place to place in a very short amount of time. What are your strategies or what you think about this story, and how would you help to improve that this story doesn't happen to anybody else?
I'm sorry that that happened to you. The children in our community should not be worried about where they're going to lay their heads at night. They should be worried about sports teams and playing with their friends and all of those sorts of things. And you were forced to manage adult problems very early on in your life. We have a lot of students in the Tigard-Tualatin School District that are couch surfing or are houseless. And it's an incredible struggle that we have. I continue to be committed to building housing and having that sort of stability that every child in our community should have. So whatever I can continue to do, I'm happy to come to the table and have that conversation and be committed to it.
I'm sorry, I missed your first name in the beginning. Could you remind me? Cynthia. Okay, yeah. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your story. Deeply, deeply impactful as well. What's going on in my mind is that it's a different problem from the first story we heard. In the first story, what stuck with me was a failure to access resources, whether they weren't there or whether those resources didn't follow through. It was a system failure because resources were not provided, services weren't there to help. In your case, you did have some resources and some services did come through. In some ways, that's good, but it also highlights another problem in our system, which is that these resources and these systems are reactive and not proactive. What struck me, the words I wrote down, was embarrassment and shame. No kid, to echo the mayor's words, should have to grow up with that. And so although these resources and services came through for you and have made things perhaps better off than they could have been, it's not enough. It's reactive, and it puts you through something that has clearly been a traumatic experience. And in the wealthiest country in the world, it's unacceptable. It's another system failure. It's a different one. And so as state legislators, we have got to create, I say we, like I'm one of them, but I'm not, but I'm, like I said, lucky to work with one. We have got to do the hard work of creating proactive systems that don't put folks through this, because it's not acceptable. Thank you again for sharing your story, Cynthia.
Yeah, I just want to echo again, I want to thank you for coming here and sharing your story. We know it's not easy. At the state level, we're working to try and create something that I think everyone needs, and that is long-term, stable housing. From your story, you had to move so many times. It created so many disruptions in your life. So what we're doing, we're trying to get funds for building new, affordable housing units for folks so they have a stable place with wraparound services that they can access, but also preserving housing that exists now that's affordable. We've seen federal dollars unfortunately expire, and we're seeing a lot of formerly market rate facilities going to, or formerly affordable units going to market rate, just like the Wood Springs facility here in Tigard. We cannot let that happen, and we need to get more funding for these things so that we can preserve this funding for folks. Lastly, I just want to say, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of federal dollars run out, and a lot of this is going to be left to the states, the counties, our regional governments, and our local officials to figure out how are we going to continue funding these programs going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a tragic situation, or a very sad situation. It points out to me two things. Our current programs were not, and that comes from a perspective of we didn't know exactly what we wanted to achieve when we started. It ignores the serious problem we have of youth that have housing, homelessness, and location community problems in this area, which is different because they are not homeowners. They don't have access to, they may not have easy access to even renting individually. So we need to do more focus on what the youth problem is and what the youth needs are. There are some facilities, but we need to be able to be adaptive. The other thing it points out to me is the regional nature. As Metro, we have boundaries, but human problems don't stay within those boundaries. The transitions from Newburgh to Tualatin to Tigard shows that these things have to be resolved at a regional level, and that takes the cooperation of the counties, of the state, and of the regional government Metro, and we can do better. We have to do better in addressing the needs of the young people who may or may not have stable family structures or may have some crisis in their families.
Cynthia, first of all, if I was standing a little closer, I'd like to give you a hug. And I would also like to celebrate your resilience. And I think I speak for everyone in the room when I say that her resilience is remarkable. There's nothing that you should be embarrassed about. And I would say that you should be proud of your resilience and your ability to survive in spite of our inability to provide the resources for you too. So with that, you have my reason. And you have public speaking in your future. So along with those words, like I said earlier, your stories help reinforce the work that we're doing in Washington County around having the appropriate number of shelter beds. This doesn't help your situation, but I want to thank you for your honesty that keeps us moving toward our goals in relationship to shelter beds and also our goals in relationship to mental health, along with the issues that are faced in our community. These things go hand in hand, whether it's a young person or whether it's a senior. I just last night went to the screening of No Place to Grow Old. Rachel Duke, who is here with SEPA, was one of the presenters, and what we've learned is the total impact of homelessness. It's about a place to call home, but it's also about the safety and the development of the resilience that you've developed to be able to weather that issue. So thank you for your words, and you've encouraged me to continue working harder in relationship to the problems that we have. Thank you.
En este momento, I want to invite Soraya to talk about her story. Soraya.
Can you hear me right? A common misconception about people experiencing homelessness is that they are lazy or unwilling to work, but that's far from the truth. For people like me, living with a disease or disability often means having to choose between health and housing. My story represents those of us who are sick and face unique and serious housing challenges. I came from Africa to pursue my dream of college, but my health issues got in the way. I have faced many difficulties with sickle cell anemia, which is a chronic disease, and due to being in the hospital on a regular basis, I could not attend school regularly. My nightmare started after giving birth to my son. I had to go back to work when he was just 5 days old because I had no access to sick leave or maternity leave, which put me back in the hospital. When I got back to the hospital, my rent went up and I tried to apply for affordable housing, but I found out that it was more expensive than the market rate apartment I was in. I reached out to many agencies, including DHS and several nonprofits, but at every door I knocked on, I was told I didn't qualify for assistance due to my immigration status or lack of eviction notice. Despite providing documentation about my health, my reduced work hours, and my urgent need, it wasn't considered enough to justify help. My son, who was born here in the United States, also has sickle cell anemia. When my son was only 2, we were homeless and lived in my car. I struggled with finding housing. I struggle with finding housing due to my status as an ID holder. I could only work part-time as a result of my health condition. This has affected me both physically and mentally because I was denied the opportunity to live here and give my son a better life too. I pay taxes as a working IT number holder, but could not apply for an employment at all. Our homelessness status has affected my son a great deal. He has grown up in an environment in which he saw me fighting for help. He started questioning why we were not getting help. My son, who is now 9 years old, also needs to receive assistance as a citizen, but he is not recognized as one or as deserving of assistance by agencies due to my immigration status. He continued to ask questions like, why is this happening? He has also suffered bullying from other school children later on because he was homelessness. Cynthia's story touches me a lot because I can imagine what her mother went through. And it makes me question how many times my son also thought about praying to God, asking him to end his life. And it was really hard to hear this from, for me, he was still a baby. And it was really hard hearing this coming out from his mouth, that he wanted to die. So, I asked for help in removing eviction notice requirements so people can receive assistance for their rent before they fall into an emergency situation. I speak not only for myself, but for all people who find they are struggling to make ends meet and get behind once in a while. They become ashamed of themselves because of how they are treated. For the ones whose voices have been shut down, I'm here to talk for you guys.
Thank you for your powerful story. Many of the people here already in the audience are inspired to show their stories, but we didn't have enough time. But if you have any questions, we have, well, it's not there, but you can go to the website or Elemento Latino or the code in the program so you can ask any questions. Danny back there, he's showing you where to look for that specific QR code, and you can put your questions there, please, or share your stories. And same thing, we're gonna be with the cameras. If you are here and you want to share your stories, please come forward to Elemento Latino team. Si alguno de ustedes quisiera compartir su historia, vemos que hay muchas personas que están inspiradas, pero por falta de tiempo no hemos podido, no podemos tener todas las historias aquí. Pero si usted quiere compartir su historia, en su programa, ahí hay un QR, ahí está Dani atrás, para que Dani les está mostrando, puedan hacer, ahí con su teléfono pueden mandar las preguntas que ustedes quieran para los oficiales electos y también compartir su historia, o pueden venir con el equipo de Elemento Latino que vamos a estar grabando esas historias también. So, along with that story, I would like to, hear from you. This is now not only homelessness, but it's health. What is the elected officials doing about it?
I'm happy to start. Soraya, I just want to thank you again for, I know how difficult it is to share these stories, and the amount of strength that all of you have shown to come here and share these with us is very helpful and very impactful as we look at making policy decisions for folks going forward. As you'd mentioned, oftentimes our services are not there until there's a crisis, and we need to be intervening with these things well in advance before things get worse for folks. We need to, recognize that housing does not exist in a vacuum. These issues are surrounded with other issues that folks face, whether it's health, whether it's food, whether it's education. We need to make sure that we're looking at the entire system so that folks have access to not just housing, but these other services that they critically need.
Thank you.
Soraya, thank you so much for sharing your story, and I'm so sorry about what you've gone through. I've got some gibberish of notes here that I'm going to try to say and get through. Firstly, you are an incredible mother, an incredible mother. I think policy making, and I've only worked in public policy for a few months now, I'm very new to the role, but the very first thing I've noticed is that it can be so detached from human beings and real lived experience. Events like this and the stories that you all are telling are so important because it lights a fire under people's butts and it shows us why we're making policy to begin with. So I promise these stories are so impactful to everybody that's here and everybody that's going to watch. And more legislators need to hear this stuff, and we need to have more events like this all over the state and, quite frankly, all over the country. I also took note of how you make a really, really good point, that there's an interconnectedness between housing and all of the other issues that you discussed, whether it's healthcare, immigration, each of these issues. We need to take urgent action on all of these because they affect one another. And we have systems right now on each of those areas that are not working for people, not living up to what their intention is. I don't know enough about eviction notice requirements to give you a good answer, but I've made note of it. I'm going to speak with Representative Bowman on it. I would like to get your contact information and be able to reach back out to you, and that goes for all of the presenters that have spoken. We want to include you at the table, and I truly believe, and I can speak on behalf of Rep. Bowman when I say this, that we are not serving you if we don't do that. So I would love to stay in contact. Thank you.
Soraya, thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate that there's different levels of government here because we all have different responsibilities. As mayor, I get up on a lot of soapboxes for things that I have no control over. I think this country fails families. And your story of having to go back to work 5 days resonates, because I had 10 days in 2020 to go back after the birth of my child. And that is a time in which you should be healing, because you are in diapers bleeding yourself, trying to take care of somebody else who also needs assistance. And so there are limits to kind of what I can do as mayor as far as policy, but I can stand next to you and I can help share your story and amplify your story for situations where I can't help. But we fail. This country fails families, and we fail from taking care of mothers to once the children are here and supporting families. And so again, I try to help where I can, understanding that my role as a mayor is also very different from individuals who are up here, where different layers of government have different responsibility. And I don't want that to feel like a cop-out answer, but I want to help where I can. And so let me know where I can help for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your words, and thank you for allowing me, the panel, and the audience to bear witness to this situation. It was powerful, and I was watching the audience response as you were talking, and there's a lot of support here, and you need to recognize that as well. I hope you do. The one thing I'd like to say is that in Washington County, we are working hard to break down silos between, for example, public health and housing, and making sure that we can cross-reference what the needs are for our communities. But I'm also going to make a statement here, and I might be out on a limb, but with this last week's election, we will all have to stand up, and we will all have to protect investments in housing, in public health, and in the systems that our communities deserve. This is something that I'm looking at closely right now, as well as many others, and we are fully aware that we need to be aligning and taking into consideration what the federal government will or will not do in relationship to our local needs. So I ask for your support. I ask for your attention to this, and really take into consideration what we will be forced to do here locally. This is a wonderful group of people, and I admire and respect your commitment to our community. Thank you for that.
I want to thank Commissioner Teresa, and I agree with the words that she said. The testimony was very moving, but it points out that the immigrant community has special problems and deserves special attention and additional flexibility, and it's something that I hope we can work on. I also want to point out that, although I look like I've been here for a long time, and I have, there was an article in the Tigard Times just recently about the original immigrants into this area, which were German immigrants. I have come from some German background. Most of us are immigrants. We just declared this is Indigenous Peoples Month. So we have to realize that we are they and they are us. We have to take that responsibility personally. And I get moved by this. We are facing significant challenges coming into the new administration, which has a very anti-immigrant attitude, and we are going to have to be stronger than we were. Thank you.
At this moment, I would like to invite Jim Al.
Too much Zuluing. Good afternoon and buenos dias to everyone. My name is Jim All, and I'm the president of Wood Springs Tenants Association. I'm widowed and have lived at Wood Spring Apartments in Tigard for 11 years with my caregiver daughter. Now, in telling the Tenants Association story, it's not just another case of injustice where a landlord found a way to raise rents by $500 a month. It's also a true story of what some forgotten seniors did about it. They decided to stay put, fight injustice, help find some solutions, and they won the battle. They won the battle. Now, since I'm over 90 years young, actually, Danny, I lied. Danny. I'm not 90, I'm 92. So, I rely mostly on my Social Security and a small IRA. Now, I was shocked in 2020 to hear how my federal housing program landlord found a way to raise my rent by 33% a month. So, that sure didn't sound fair, and it certainly wasn't reasonable. So the aha moment, aha says, aha, came to the Wood Spring residents on Channel TV 6 News. When they saw the tents that they pitched for their rally, they realized that their rent could go up $500 a month, but their Social Security would only go up $200 a month. Now, without another $3,600 of income, it looked like we may have to move out to the street and Tigard. So, what did the tenants do about it? Well, they fought the battle and they won. Now, they won by knocking on 172 unit doors, getting support from families, local businesses, the Tigard mayor, which was Jason at the time, and state and county elected officials, and the Washington County Development Manager, a good consultant, and the TV stations. They formed a nonprofit corporation to speak for the tenants who felt like they had no voice and their needs were not being met. They appeared at the Capitol in Salem with a show of force to demonstrate the need to save low-income housing, not only for us older adults, but for poor working families with children. Now, meanwhile, the Washington County wanted to help. So they stepped in to save the seniors' homes with an innovative approach to the county development manager. They worked out a plan for the county to buy the apartments with both state and county funding. Now, the complex is owned by Washington County Housing Authority, and it's managed independently under a contract. Qualified low-income older adults and families with children can now live here safely with rent that they can afford. Though our battle has been won, the fight for housing and justice continues. We are pleased to support St. Anthony's team and other resources, and our experience is that as they lead their own fight, they will be fighting justice. Together, we can ensure that no one has to face these struggles alone. Thank you.
Thank you. So with this issue, we have a lot of, like seniors struggling how to pay rent. What is the elected officials and the governor going to do about it?
Well, first of all, what I'd like to say is thank you so much for telling the Wood Springs story. And I was there, I lived it, I saw your face in our auditorium with everybody else, and it was powerful. It was really very powerful. And the good news is, well, let me take just a step back and say, one of the issues that we face with affordable housing, with homelessness, is the fact that there isn't one stream of funding that answers our needs. it's multiple streams of fundings, and it's like building a tower with Jenga. I mean, it's very difficult to do. I see Rachel Duke here laughing, but I think she's in agreement that it's a tough thing to do. And in the case of Woodspring, the state came through, thank you very much, with $25 million that was designated. I believe it was for historical preservation. Was that it? Close. Oh, okay. So the point is that we put together the funding to make this work. And the residents also agreed to the plan moving forward, which is that we intend for these units that are generally larger sized units, 2 bedrooms, to become family housing. So our seniors are now living with families as they come in, and hopefully it'll be that community that I know you'll build that will be good for our young people and for our seniors. So thank you for your work there. The other thing that I do want to go back to is I mentioned the screening of the film that I attended last night, No Place to Grow Old. I have a sheet that I'll put up here. You can request screenings for your groups, and I would encourage you to do so. The story is very compelling. The groups that are sponsoring it are compelling, and it is therefore could have been the residents of Woodspring, and they're not. So those are the good stories. Thank you for telling me. Thank you.
I just want to add a little bit. At the time that this came up, I had friends who lived in Wood Springs, and they came to me and said, we have this problem, it's going market rate, we can't afford it. And at that time I go, oh my gosh, this is a problem, what do we do? So that started the discussion, as you pointed out, in the media and with the government or agencies. And all I want to do is I want to thank the County Housing Authority for coming up with a creative way to purchase the property and keep that from happening. But properties going market rate and pricing people on fixed incomes out is a problem that we have to continue to deal with. It's just one aspect of the problem, along with the youth, along with the immigrant community, and along with people who have various kinds of personal issues that they have to deal with, whether it's substance abuse, carceral abuse, or behavioral issues. So it's a complex problem, and thank you.
Jim, I just want to thank you again, like Pam did, about sharing the story of Wood Springs. Senator Woods and I became first aware of this in 2022 when he was running to represent this area in the Senate. And unfortunately, Wood Springs is the first. It's the canary in the coal mine for a number of other facilities or other apartment complexes around the state that are going to be experiencing the same problem. These federal funds running out and a lot of these units becoming market rate. The funding need is great. Generally, I think our state puts about $50 million-ish towards towards housing preservation every biennium. We need to be doing a lot more, and we're working on that right now.
Jen, thank you for telling your story and bringing some humor to the room, which I enjoyed. I know Representative Bowman is aware of the Woodspring project and has other members of staff who have worked on it and are working on it. Yeah, and I'm extremely grateful for all of the partners that have come together to work on that, from the local level to state to nonprofits that have come together. It's an extraordinary demonstration of collective action and how we really can do things to protect people and keep people housed. I myself don't know enough about this issue, having just come on recently, but it's part of the reason that we need to show up. I can't know about this and hear that to what he just said, it's a canary in the coal mine. This is a big issue, and if we're going to have people that are working on policy in the coming session, the long session this year, where hopefully we can get a lot done, we need to know. We need to know these things. So I'm so grateful to be here and to hear your story.
Thank you, Jim. them. I don't have a ton to add, I think, to this conversation, other than the city of Tigard was with you and was the whole way. Former Mayor Snyder, I was also involved advocating with the ownership group and with the state level, and that's what I promise to continue to do. It is a canary in the coal mine. It was a 30-year that all of a sudden, went into saying it doesn't have to be affordable housing anymore. The subsidy was going away, and there's a lot of this that's going to be happening across the state. And it's very expensive to preserve this, and it is absolutely the canary of knowing that this is going to continue to happen over and over in our community and in our state. And we need to continue to resolve, I have to slow down, I'm sorry, I'm a fast talker, continue to advocate for that level of funding to continue to preserve this. Because, and I think that's also perhaps some of cutting off the nose to spite our face, trying to build more affordable housing and having difficulty trying to preserve what we already have. And there are strict rules around funding, so ensuring that our state legislators, our county, the metro understands to maybe reduce some of those restrictions so we can use funding in different ways, because we're not preserving, right? We're reacting instead of preserving, and we need to do a better job of that. So I continue to promise to advocate and tell that story to make sure we're making good decisions and we're writing good policy that actually helps. It's less costly to preserve than it is to build, so more of that.
Thank you. Well, we need more people like Jim, and that he's been working hard, and we see his experience. It was a positive experience, but we need more people in the audience that is able to support these efforts, regardless of being impacted or not. We need to stand together, and we see a big example of it. Now we want the elected officials at different levels to come together, and we invite you to help us and support us, because if we all work together, we can make a change. Now we would like to present María Silva. Su historia va a estar en español, la traducción estará en inglés. So her story is going to be in English, but the closed caption is going to be on your screens. I mean, in Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. ¿Qué harías tú si alguien arrojara un mapache muerto en tu porche, disparara balas al aire fuera de tu casa y amenazara tu vida? Esta es una represalia en que enfrentamos mi familia y yo. Después de quejarnos de un vecino problemático, sin embargo, fuimos desalojados primero. Déjame contarte mi historia. El problema que enfrentamos debido a un vecino problemático y la inacción de los propietarios. Era el verano del 2023 cuando intenté resolver amigablemente los problemas que tenía con mi vecina de arriba. Desafortunadamente, ella descartó todas mis preocupaciones, así que acudimos al gerente. Después de que mi esposo se comunicó con el gerente, nos dijeron que teníamos 2 días para presentar una queja formal. Sin embargo, por temor a represalias, le dije a mi marido que no presentara una denuncia formal. Sin embargo, cuando mi esposo llamó a la gerente para informarle de nuestra decisión, ya era demasiado tarde. Ella había enviado una carta de advertencia a la vecina. Cuando el vecino tomó represalias, su novio nos intimidó arrojando un mapache muerto a nuestro porche. Después, balas al aire y amenazando nuestras vidas. Llamamos a la policía, pero no investigaron adecuadamente. Debido al favoritismo, ya que la persona que nos la atacó era hijastro de alguien en el cuerpo policial. Al contrario, la policía vino a investigarnos a nosotros porque la vecina nos denunció falsamente a la policía, admitiéndolo entre risas ante otro residente. Poco después de estos hechos, tomamos la difícil decisión de dejar nuestro apartamento porque nuestra situación de vida ya no era segura ni habitable. Nos mudamos a un hotel en Tigard, agotando nuestros ahorros, acumulando deudas, casi $30,000 después del hasta al momento. A pesar de pedir ayuda a varias agencias, no encontramos ayuda. Luego recibimos una notificación de desalojo de nuestro apartamento, lo que dañó aún más nuestro historial de alquiler y dificultó la búsqueda de una vivienda alternativa. Esta vecina tenía un historial de agresión e intimidación y los propietarios ignoraron cada señal de advertencia, poniendo en peligro la seguridad y calidad de vida a mi familia. Ella debería haber sido desalojada mucho antes de nosotros. La gerente no actuó y en cambio nos castigó a nosotros, las víctimas, cuando al fin desalojaron. Ya era demasiado tarde, el daño ya estaba hecho. Esta negligencia no debería continuar. Estoy aquí porque quiero ver una mayor responsabilidad y supervisión por parte de los propietarios y la administración de propiedades. Los propietarios deben garantizar la seguridad de sus propiedades y de los inquilinos. Los funcionarios electos tienen el poder de cambiar esto. Gracias.
Queremos recordarles que en sus formas, en sus programas, tenemos el QR Code para que manden sus preguntas, sus historias. Estas historias son reales y son más frecuentes de lo que podamos imaginar. Entonces, por favor, vaya a los programas. Si usted quiere compartir alguna historia, alguna pregunta, las vamos a tener, las vamos a estar pues, recopilando para podérselas llevar y mostrar a los oficiales electos.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry for what you went through. Retaliation is absolutely unacceptable, and everyone should feel safe in their home. It's a failure of our system that you weren't listened to and protected. I'd like to hear more about the story to understand how the city can do better, our police department can do better. If this was Tigard, I don't know if it was Tigard. Beaverton? Okay. I'd be happy to share this with the mayor of Beaverton. And what I will say is, I know the city of Tigard continues to have the discussion around tenant rights and oversight, and I can only speak for myself and not the other 4 members, soon to be 6. But I hope Tigard continues this conversation, and I am an advocate of having that conversation and having more rights and bringing everyone to the table to talk about what that should be. But you shouldn't have been threatened or forced to leave your home, and I'm very sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
Maria, right? Maria. Thank you, Maria, for sharing your story again. What struck me was accountability and oversight. I think that is so important, and there's several ways accountability and oversight needs to work in a situation like you had. I think The most immediate ones are resources and opportunity for recourse, including legal recourse. And I don't know off the top of my head of how we can improve the accessibility of those resources or even just the marketing of those resources so people know they exist and know that they can access them. I know that one of the most fulfilling parts of my job, and maybe the other staff on the panel can speak to this as well, is when we get to do casework. So whenever folks email or call into our office and say, I have no one else to go to, I have this challenge, please help me. Everybody, I assume, can relate in some ways that there are things that you don't like about your job, but you do it because it's your job. When I get these casework, all of that goes away. It is an opportunity to really tangibly help people. And I think as legislative staffers, we need to do better at that. We need to find ways to innovate, and that can be a way to get people more resources. And we need to be a fighter for you, and that goes for staff and for the legislators themselves. And then the long-term reform. I talked in the beginning about the two-pronged approach. I think in the short term, that casework approach really works, but in the long term, we have to find ways to do better and legislate, whether that's assisting the city or the nonprofits that are doing this important work, or through various funding streams, or actually the state stepping in and making some change. Thank you again so much for sharing your story. It stuck with me. I'm going to make sure Representative Bowman hears it. I'm going to make sure everyone on our team hears it. And I would be delighted if we can connect in the future. Thank you.
I also just want to thank you, Maria, and echo my fellow staffer here. Unfortunately, we always have to wait for folks to reach out to us for the most part. So when it comes to helping folks, we're usually towards the end of the process, but we want to be able to help you as much as you can. So anyone here, if there's any issues that you have with any state services or any level of government, reach out to us. If we can't help, we'll point you to folks who might be able to as well, depending upon what the situation is. And I can't imagine how terrifying it must have been to go through that, especially with your family there in the home. I think from our perspective, we want to be committed to working with all of our partners up here, local, county, metro, others. How do we hold these folks accountable? What do we need to do at the state level? So I'm open to that conversation and looking forward to having you be part of it.
Thank you, Maria, for your story. Problems with difficult and unreasonable neighbors are a particularly intractable issue. I'm sure most of us have had neighbors that we didn't get along with very well. They're difficult because they involve social services and often legal aspects and the laws. We can do more to make our laws fairer for tenants, and I will always support, I should point out, Metro does not have a direct responsibility or legal authority to intervene in these cases in most regards. But what we can do is support the cities and the counties so they have the appropriate community resources to actually deal with these cases on an individual basis, because that's what it takes. And also, if there is a problem, and in this case that Maria and her family felt they had to move, to have the social services network available to provide quick response and to help them move into another situation. And that's, I hope we can keep working on this with the county and the cities.
I stand with my other partners here in saying I'm very sorry, and it's unacceptable. Hate is hate, and we have to fight hate wherever we can. That's very important. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that we had the opportunity as a group to listen to 3 providers for community-based organizations when we first came in the room, and I would suggest that talking with the Oregon Law Center and it's Sybil, yes, and also Kim from Tenant Rights, I would encourage you to have a conversation with them. And while I'm talking about the community-based organizations that are in the room that are here to support you, I'd like to ask that all of you that represent a community-based organization, please stand up. And that includes board members for Habitat for Humanity, former executive directors for Habitat for Humanity, and others. The reason I ask, look at this. These people, thank you so much. And what I really want to get across here is that the county, metro, the city, the state, we can't do this by ourselves. We do this with our community-based organizations. And these are the people that recognize the community's needs. They recognize what the community has to have and communicate it back to your elected leaders, as well as from a grassroots perspective. But I hope that you can take, all of the presenters today can take some comfort in seeing the people that are here to hear your stories. It's not just those of us that are on the panel. So thank you, Maria. I wish you the best, and I'm very sorry about that. And at the same time, I want everybody that spoke today to recognize what the support in this room is from our community-based organizations and also from the people here that care, and they really do care. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, we just hope that one of the agencies that are here today might be able to take Maria's case and to help her, because it's not about just landlord issues, it's about negligence. So I hope we can.
Because that's no consequence but the bad thing. Because it's the son of Castro, and she Castro never investigate, and we are innocent. I had the evidence, I had the details, I had my husband submit for the district attorney all the case what happened and never investigate. This is injustice.
Okay, so we'll make sure that you share your phone number and contact with, with them. Okay. Muy bien, pues como se mencionó muy al principio, el propósito de este evento no es solo compartir nuestras historias con funcionarios electos, sino también proponer soluciones viables que reflejen nuestras experiencias e inquietudes colectivas. En este segmento, los miembros de la comunidad preguntarán a los funcionarios electos si pueden comprometerse a apoyar la realización de las siguientes iniciativas, y les pedimos que respondan explícitamente con un sí o con un no, y tendrán un minuto para responder cada pregunta. I'm not sure if you're getting that into your cell phones, yeah? So basically we're going to be asking some questions, and we want you to answer yes or no, and you're going to have a minute to develop your answer. Y antes de continuar queremos resaltar los puntos claves. Primero, somos gente común. Ninguno de nosotros aquí presentes somos legisladores, abogados o formuladores de políticas. Reconocemos que las propuestas pueden requerir mayor aclaración o estudio. Si ese es el caso, simplemente le pedimos que nos incluya en el proceso de perfeccionar estas ideas para hacerlas más prácticas. Y en segundo lugar, entendemos que es posible que las complejidades de su función no siempre permitan un sí o un no directo en este momento, sino que pueden comprometerse hoy, y les pedimos que compartan los pasos específicos que puedan tomar para hacer avanzar estas iniciativas y cómo podemos continuar con esta conversación vital. Les quiero recordar también a las personas que tienen ahí en su programa un QR. Manden sus preguntas. Sabemos que en estos momentos hay muchas preguntas, muchos comentarios. Tenemos muy poco tiempo, pero invitamos a que lo hagan para que después Daniel se los va a proveer a los elected officials. Él va a poder dar esta información para que ellos tengan nuestras preguntas y poder dar una mejor respuesta y trabajar en equipo en estas iniciativas. Y en este momento me gustaría invitar a Cindy White, to come forward.
Thank you. You've heard a lot of impactful stories today, and we thank you for being here to listen to them. But as mentioned by Maria, one of the fundamental questions, just pull it up. One of the fundamental questions we've been grappling with as a committee is who or what holds landlords and property managers accountable? Finding an answer to this question is crucial as it directly impacts the safety and stability of our communities. We believe that greater accountability can be achieved through a three-pronged approach. You mentioned being proactive. This is what we're suggesting. First, a rental property registry. Second, proactive rental inspections. And a rental housing report card system. This approach would require property owners to register their properties with the city, enhancing transparency and facilitating better tracking and communication. Proactive rental inspections would ensure that landlords and property managers maintain their physical buildings and overall safe living conditions for their tenants. Meanwhile, a rental housing report card would evaluate and publicize landlord and property management performance, property maintenance, and compliance with existing fair housing laws. This system would include the opportunity for tenants to review rental housing properties in a way that is safe and anonymous. With greater oversight, property owners would be held responsible for addressing issues before they escalate into dangerous situations like what Maria had to deal with, like what Veronica had to deal with, and Soraya and Cynthia. Ultimately, we believe this approach will help keep people housed and preserve our existing housing stock, benefiting everybody in our community. So my question to you as elected officials and representatives of our elected officials, will you commit to strengthening landlord accountability and property management by implementing a rental property registration, proactive inspections, and a rental housing report card system?
So as I said, the city of Tigard has started these conversations, and I have been the most vocal proponent of some of these requests, and so I commit to continuing the conversation and bringing it up. Again, I will say I am one of 5, and so I ask all of you, soon to be one of 7, I ask all of you to talk to your counselors. My voice only goes so far. I may be at the pointy end, but please talk to your counselors as well about this. But I commit to bringing it back to the city and continuing to have this conversation.
Thank you.
So as I said in the very beginning, unfortunately Representative Bowman couldn't be here, and I thank you all for having me. I cannot make commitments on Representative Bowman's behalf, and I don't know what his view of these 3 issues are. And I don't say that just because I don't think he supports them. I just am not aware of what his individual view on those issues are. What I can say is that I think there are already conversations being had about a lot of these things, especially landlord accountability, and I think this is something we want to look really closely at. And the other thing is, I use the word proactive a lot in the remarks I gave today, because when I first started this job, what Representative Bowman told me personally was that in this office, we err on the side of action. So I can absolutely commit that we are going to be proactive, we're going to approach solutions in a proactive way, we're going to try to encourage our colleagues in the legislature. Again, it takes all of us, and it's going to take a lot of legislators to get on board with this, but the goal is to identify proactive solutions similar to the ones you described.
I'll just say I'm in a similar boat to my colleague here. I cannot make any proclamations on the senator's behalf, but I can say that we have seen these already, and we are having conversations with folks in the legislature about what we can do going forward. So please stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have more that I can share as we get closer to the legislative session.
For me personally, yes, and yes. I can't speak for all the members of the Metro Council or the Metro Council President Peterson, but I'm pretty sure they would all agree. So to the extent that we can support it, not being legally involved in it, yes, we would support the efforts of the cities, our cities and the counties to move forward in this direction.
Thank you.
This is clearly an area where we need to work. My personal belief, as well as being, again, as has been said before, one of five, I have always been a collaborator. I have always worked with other parties to make sure that our communities are served in the best way that they can be. So certainly the answer is yes. The piece that we all need to keep in mind is how can we do this effectively? And what I mean by that is, what do the new laws on the books at the state level look like in relationship to landlord tenant protections? We need to understand that. We need to understand what the role of the state is here, and we need to understand how the municipalities and the counties can work together to have a seamless approach to this. It's, a little lesson in maybe design here is that the municipalities are responsible for their residents. The county addresses issues in unincorporated areas. So we can't work independent of each other. It's critical that we work together. But like I said initially, collaboration is what gets us down the road. And we need to be able to do that with Representative Bowman, with Senator Woods, with Mayor Liu, with Metro, and I think by seeing all of us up here today, you have that commitment of collaboration and working forward for the benefit of our people in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? We all want to collaborate with you, all of you. So what do you suggest is our next step to make these happen?
In Washington County, we have several commissioners that hold town halls, myself included. I think being aware of when you can provide input in those town halls to those commissioners is really important. I think that providing testimony to the commissioners is another important avenue, as well as communicating through our community-based organizations that we work closely with, and to hold more events like this. Thank you. And to encourage areas throughout our county to do the same. You've done a marvelous job here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say thank you for this forum. It's been very instructive and very informative. Metro will follow the lead of the cities and the counties and the legislators on this issue, and we will be collaborative and try and bring people together and to talk about these issues and how we can do more to protect people and families.
request that goes to all of council mail at tigard-or.gov. Please come to a city council meeting. Please reach out to individual councilors, spend time with them, and elevate these stories and your requests. That's the best way to engage with the city right now. And then again, January 1st, you'll have 2 more people you can talk to.
Thank you for your commitments moving forward on these 3 issues. I think that we can all agree that today's time together has been rich, though brief. There are many more layers to each of the stories you heard and additional solutions we'd love to explore with you. Our final ask is simple. Will you commit to meeting with us in January 2025 at another setting like this to continue this conversation and discuss further ideas for creating housing solutions that support all members of our community? Raise your programs and yell. Yes. Yes. As we conclude this initial discussion, could you also briefly share how the presentations and stories you heard today will inform your work moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your time here today, and thank you for sharing your stories. I think for me personally, just continuing to center these stories, and I personally try to center people who aren't at the table and think about, one, what is stopping them from being at the table, and how their experiences will, my policy will impact their experiences. And so I just continue to take these stories with me, and want to thank you again for sharing them today.
Yes, we can, on behalf of Representative Bowman and our team, absolutely we commit to meeting with you in January and any other time. Absolutely we will do that. As far as what this event has done for me, I have spent a lot of time since starting this job helping a constituent in our community, and I think it's worth sharing this story very briefly. Representative Bowman went on a ride-along with Officer Orth in Tigard recently and was made aware of a veteran that was evicted from his home for very many similar reasons that were shared here today. We have been working tirelessly to help this veteran get back into housing, gone through the process of trying to access multiple different resources for us to come up short. Finally, we're able to get a voucher for him to get into an apartment, and has now been told by 2 different apartment complexes he's applied to that because of a prior eviction, they will not let him into housing. I want to echo everything else that my fellow panelists have said and that I have said when we say this is unacceptable. It is a system failure. It is along with the same things that you all have shared today, whether you're an immigrant, a veteran, whether you're a senior, whether you have a child, no matter what, you have a human right to housing. We have got to take action on it. I think this session we're going to make some headway on that stuff. I'm really excited to be a part of it. I feel very honored and blessed to be an Oregonian. I'm not originally from Oregon, but these are our values, and we can do it together, and it starts with doing stuff like this. So I'm so excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
I just want to thank you folks for again, having us out here today. I'm going to echo, yes, we can be here on January to continue this conversation. And the stories that you folks have shared, these heart-wrenching stories, they're very helpful for us when we go back and we're trying to explain to our fellow legislators, the other 89 folks in that building, why we need these policies to go forward. So it's these individual stories, and I know these are difficult for you folks to be sharing, but they really do make a big impact when we go back and talk to the other members.
Again, thank you very much. It's been very informative. What this does for me is recommits my efforts to make sure that people realize this is a regional issue. I won't name all 24 cities, but that includes not just the cities in Metro, but also the cities surrounding, whether it's Newburgh or Canby or Woodburn.
That's how you get a politician to stop talking.
I thought that was just to keep me from naming all the cities and all the surrounding cities. But I think a commitment is to realize that this affects people across boundaries, and so we have to have a regional solution. And my commitment is to continue to work with the cities and with the counties, Clackamas, Washington, and Multnomah, to try and make sure we address this as a regional issue. And I'm not going to forget Clark County either, because they're part of our metro area.
First of all, it's very important to me to thank our presenters for allowing me and all of us to bear witness. I believe you have moved our needle in relationship to energy and motivation to address this issue. Thank you for that. There's a couple other things I'd like to say. Number one, in reaction to the comments that were made about the veteran addiction and rent assistance. In Washington County, the city of Tigard, the state have all contributed money to what's called the Center for Addiction Triage and Treatment. That's going to be opening this summer, and the key element to that center, there's two different locations, is going to be the combination of services that are required to help us treat people in need. And what that means is if you come in with an addiction issue, there's the housing component will be there. There's behavioral health there. So that's how I believe we in Washington County are going to work to address those issues. The other thing that I'd like to say is as we move forward, we have to look at the funding opportunities for these issues that have been raised today. We have to be aware of what the federal funding issues are that I talked about earlier, and we have to be strong about insistence for local funding. I really encourage you to stay well informed, to be on top of what's happening in your cities, in your counties, and at the regional level. Again, thank you for being here.
Well, we're looking forward for the next housing justice. Today we had, you know how many people showed up today? 233 people. Yes. 233 votes is what Gina's saying. So we see that these issues are real, are important to talk about. So we would love to have your commitment for the next fair, housing fair, to come and celebrate with us and find solutions altogether. Queremos recordarles que pues tenemos 233 personas que vinieron hoy, estuvieron aquí presentes. Gracias por hacerse presente, because this is important for all of us. Esto quiere decir que nos importa y tenemos ahora sí que el compromiso de hacer las cosas. And I apologize, I went from English to Spanish bilingual, so I'm sorry for the closed captioners might not get what I'm saying, right? So quiero también, pues a medida que nos acercamos ya al final de esta segunda parte de este evento, tomemos un momento para reflexionar sobre lo que hemos experimentado hasta ahora. Comenzamos con 3 presentaciones interesantes de Alianza Comunitaria de Inquilinos, también tuvimos a Community Action y el Centro Legal de Oregon, 3 expertos líderes en la vivienda. Un fuerte aplauso para ellos, por favor. Gracias por su experiencia. Obtuvimos información valiosa sobre las tendencias y los desafíos de la vivienda y construimos una imagen más clara de los problemas que enfrenta nuestra región. Después de esto escuchamos 5 testimonios poderosos de Verónica, Cintia, Soraya, Jim y María. Por favor, un fuerte aplauso. This is for you. Embrace it. Sus historias ponen en nuestro rostro humano a la crisis de la vivienda, mostrando el increíble coraje y resiliencia que cada uno de ellos aporta en esta lucha. Juntos exploramos soluciones prácticas inspiradas en estas experiencias vividas. Fue significativo presenciar a nuestros funcionarios públicos escuchando, respondiendo y comprometiéndose a ayudar a estas propuestas que se hagan realidad. Y antes de pasar a nuestro tercer y último segmento, tomemos un momento para expresar nuestra profunda gratitud a todos los que hicieron este posible evento. Muchísimas gracias y hoy voy a invitar a Jenny y Oscar. ¿Dónde están?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who made this possible. The whole team is just grateful for today. Special thanks to the Community Action, Community Alliance of Tenants and Oregon Law Center for the insights in their presentations that brought really essential context to our discussion. We're grateful to you showing up and standing with us. We really appreciate it. It couldn't happen without you.
I just want to say, Emmanuel, ¿te puedes parar? That young man over there is the one who made the eternal roses. Just one shot there.
And we could not have done this without the stories you were willing to share. Veronica, Cynthia, Soraya, and Maria and Jim, thank you so much for sharing your lived experiences and hope they carry forward. Thank you, Veronica, for moderating wherever you are. There you are. And we'd like to extend a special appreciation to the parish staff and volunteers who dedicated a lot of time and energy to pull this off. Your behind-the-scenes work and energy really helped bring this all together. Lastly, I'd like to thank our entertainment, Cara O'Cruz and the Corazon Utilitarian Handcrafts who designed our t-shirts. Somebody said early in one of the presentations, collective action works. I think we just launched a collective action, so let's keep it going.
Muchas gracias, querida Janie. Efectivamente, queremos expresar nuestro más sincero agradecimiento a nuestros patrocinadores, la ciudad de Tigard, Brenda Boiso, Vivo Realty, Welcome Home Coalition, Bobadilla Law y Ecumenical Ministry of Oregon, cuyos apoyos hicieron posible esta reunión. Les estamos muy agradecidos. Por último, pero no menos importante, les agradecemos a cada uno de ustedes por estar aquí, por su presencia, por su participación. Gracias por tomarse el tiempo de compartir esta importante conversación. Agradecemos su decidido apoyo. Su presencia demuestra que la justicia habitacional es una preocupación compartida y que juntos estamos comprometidos a crear una comunidad en la cual todos tengan un hogar donde puedan florecer, como mencionó el padre John al principio. Oye, con esto vamos concluyendo la segunda parte de nuestro evento, pero los invitamos a quedarse a disfrutar de un merecido almuerzo, que está por allí ya sirviéndose, al compás de más música en vivo y así reunir energías para el trabajo que tenemos por delante, porque tenemos un gran trabajo que seguir construyendo entre todos. Adicionalmente, anunciaremos los ganadores del sorteo entre todos los compradores de boleto, así que asegúrense de quedarse para recibir su premio. Tómense también un momento para, por favor, escanear el código, ya lo he dicho varias veces, nuestra querida Verónica, aquí al final. Para nosotros es muy importante que ustedes lo hagan, escaneen el código y allí en sus teléfonos le va a aparecer la pestaña Polls y allí compartirán sus comentarios. Para nosotros, escucharlos es fundamental. Nuestro trabajo ha venido siendo desde hace muchos meses el poder escucharlos, escuchar cuáles son sus angustias, cuáles son sus inquietudes, qué es lo que ustedes quieren expresar. Nuestro trabajo es recolectar toda esa información para poder ponernos en trabajo con todas estas personas que decididamente nos apoyan. Gracias nuevamente por ser parte de este encuentro que nos pertenece a todos nosotros. Dense un gran aplauso a ustedes mismos. Un gran aplauso. Y queremos, nuestra querida Verónica tiene por aquí una sorpresita.
Good evening, buenas tardes. If I can have everyone that has this t-shirt on, please come up. Todos que tengamos una playera como esta, que estuvo involucrado en este evento, por favor, párense y venga para acá enfrente. Especially Danny, if we can have you in the front right next to us. So, no, it's our turn to make you cry. No, durante todo este tiempo, and I speak on all of this that we're here, during this time, should I say it in English or Spanish? Okay, I'll say it in English. During this time, when we were personally, my family and I were going through this, we were right from the corner, and we were going through a hard time. We came to one of the listening sessions that you actually held in November, right? Back in November, October. And it was a hard time. And I speak, I think, from everyone here. You've touched our hearts. And you made it possible. So it's something very simple, but a picture we printed out saying thank you. So when you have that time in your office, when you're shaking your head, stretching it, thinking, wow, look at the picture of all of us together and just see what you've done. Bring light in God's spirit and place here for us all.
finalmente, en este momento queremos invitar al padre John, quien le solicitamos sus palabras de cierre. Él fue el que comenzó todo esto el día de hoy, así como su bendición de los alimentos que vamos ahora a comer.
So first of all, once again, I just want to say this. I wasn't going to say anything else today, and I know you're probably going to say, oh, come on, let's get going, because you're all hungry. But I do want to say, as pastor of this community, one of the things that always, that I was concerned about was being able to stand up for the concerns of our brothers and sisters. So I would get calls asking me, what are we doing about this or that? And I was getting so kind of frustrated. So I knew that I needed someone on my team who's going to help me and our community to really be out there to help our brothers and sisters, especially those in need. And so I have a relationship with Danny, and I asked Danny if he could be our social justice person. And I have to tell you, I am so inspired by his hard work and what he does here in our community. And I am truly grateful, truly grateful. And I also want to share something that I struggle with as well. I'm very concerned, and I share this very personally, about the direction of our country. I'm concerned about the issues. And I am going to be on the forefront to be positive, to stand firm, and to do all we can to help our brothers and sisters in need. This is so important. We cannot give up. We need to be really concerned. And I want you to know that you are important. You are not meant to be thrown out or treated like garbage. And our brothers and sisters who are here in this diverse community that we have, you will always be respected and welcomed and embraced. And I want to thank you for, because I could really sense your listening to us. And I am truly grateful. And I hope that you can take these questions that were presented by Cindy, that you can take them and really reflect on them and help us to continue to grow as a community. This is but one issue, right? There will be others. And we need to continue to be with our people. You know, we are supposed to be people of prayer in relationship with God, that God loves us and cares for us and is concerned about us. And we must have that relationship. But we must also be people of action, people who live out the gospel message, people who live out God's love every day of our lives. So I am personally inviting you back in the future to let us know how things are going. You know, what's happening, what's the progression, and so that we can take an honest look at all of this and be there to support you in the work that you do, and you support us in the work that is important to all of us. Because, you know, sometimes, I know, but don't know, but sometimes I work in my office at my desk, and I'm not always with everybody, you know, and that's the same for all of you, right? We work in our desk, and we're up here in the world, but the reality is sometimes we have to be down in the gutters. We have to be down in the trenches. We have to be with the brothers and sisters who are in need. So I want to thank you. Thank you to our new mayor. We look forward to John Cook used to be, he's a member of our parish here. And so he says, oh, she's going to be good. Okay, good. So thank you. And I want to just bless this food. This food is prepared by our community. And I am just truly grateful for Matsalan. Also, I think was involved in the helping of this as well, I think, right? Okay. And so I just want us to give praise to the Lord for all of us here and to thank God for this food. And so let's say together, bless us. Okay, gracias, hasta luego. Bye-bye. Okay, go ahead.
Please help yourselves. You can make a line right here for lunch and stick around and enjoy some food together and listen to some awesome music. If somebody in the back could raise the projector street.
time.